part at these types of speeds because of the danger it exposes the officers to. Right now, with these types of conditions on the freeway, even though he's traveling at extremely high rates of speed, it's not like he's in a vehicle that is heavy and could run into other vehicles, cause accidents. Certainly this could cause a crash. But the motorcyclist, if it crashes at this rate of speed, more than likely, it would be a fatal. He probably would not survive the injuries if he's involved in a crash at these speeds. But the volume is light for the most part on the eastbound side of the Santa Monica Freeway. That CHP motorcyclist has backed off. He's quite a ways behind him, not in our shot. And right now they're following overhead with the LAPD helicopter that is assisting. So if you just joined us, we don't know exactly what this individual is wanted for besides a failure to yield. They more than likely tried to pull him over for excessive speed. That was the initial indication that we got. And when they tried to light him up, with lights and sirens, he refused to pull over. And then we had this pursuit. It's been going on now for maybe 20, 25 minutes or so. It started on the 110 freeway in South LA, got onto the 105 East, then onto the 405 North, then took the 10 West down into Santa Monica, and now he's on the Santa Monica Freeway eastbound. You see those speeds close to 120 miles an hour. Coming up on Robertson, this is going to be the Culver City area. We'll get into Mid-City, and it looks like there's not much volume on the eastbound 10 right now, all the way into downtown Los Angeles. We'll see if this individual makes a loop. We see that a lot of times. They start in one area, they go back to that area. At this point in time there, though, it does not look like law enforcement is going to do anything to try and stop them. They're just going to follow overhead with a helicopter. I can't say they've gone into complete surveillance mode because there are some motor units and a motorcycle behind this motorcycle, law enforcement. But they look like they've gone to a posture where they don't want to be right behind him because of these excessive speeds, and they're going to let the helicopter overhead just follow along. One thing, we don't have a lot of volume. That means if the motorcyclist just continues with this type of driving, although the speed is excessive, and it's certainly very dangerous to people out on the freeways, it's not like seeing a car at these types of speeds, and it's easy for the motorcyclist to get around. But it only takes one misstep by a vehicle in front of him at these types of speeds, or one pothole, or one wrong move, and he could crash very easily, especially when he starts swerving in and out of traffic. You see when he starts to swerve, he slows down a little bit, and then you see the acceleration on these motorcycles are just unbelievable. You can go from 70 miles an hour to 100 in a matter of seconds with that power to weight ratio on some of these larger motorcycles. We're still in the Mid-City area, eastbound on the Santa Monica Freeway, and at this point it looks like CHP and LAPD are content to just follow this motorcycle from the air. Although a few moments ago, if you're with us, we saw a CHP motorcycle zoom up behind him as you're leaving the Santa Monica area at 100 miles an hour, come right up to him, right behind him. Must have wanted to get a good look, and then of course at this speed he backed off very quickly. We'll take the sky map off here for a moment, give you a little better shot, but it does show us the speeds. And Marcel, I don't know if you heard it, but he wants you to leave the mile per hour on, but the sky map off. There we go, the street's off. And that sort of gives us, that gives you the location, it gives you the speed of the motorcycle without the blur of the actual streets, or the freeway in this case. But it's very difficult in a situation like this for law enforcement to do much. You know, you can't put out a spike strip. You really can't get in front of this individual in any way. They'll start to put units on some of the off-ramps. Obviously, LAPD is notifying some of the areas that they have a pursuit of a motorcycle traveling at extremely high rates of speed. They may have something else they want this individual for. That was a pretty close call there, swerving around that vehicle. But as far as trying to stop this, it's nearly impossible. You just can't get ahead of something like this, not at these types of speeds. So they're content right now to just follow from the air, keep units aware of what is going on in the area, so that if the suspect, this motorcyclist, does get off of the freeway onto the surface streets, maybe they can try and, in that sense, or in that type of situation, get this to come to a conclusion. We're on the Santa Monica Freeway eastbound. We'll be hitting the 110 freeway here in a moment, so we're headed right into the heart of downtown Los Angeles. Still at extremely high rates of speed. A little more volume here If he gets over to the far right lane, he'll be able to transition to either the 110 north or southbound. But staying in that left lane there, it looks like he'd have to continue on the Santa Monica Freeway eastbound out to the East LA area if he continues for maybe another 3 or 4 miles. But look at those speeds. We've seen up above 120 miles an hour and just flying right by some of the other cars on the freeway. It looks here that he slowed a bit, and I'm not certain what that was all about when he went by that vehicle and then made a little bit of a movement towards the car. I'm not sure if the car might have moved in front of him, and that got his attention. He is slowing quite a bit, and we are coming up on the 110 freeway. Not certain what the motorcycle is looking back for, and there he made a turn into the right lane. I think that's a collector road. It can get him off of the freeway, but he can also still stay on the freeway if he stays in the left lane. That get him off maybe on Main Street or Spring coming up on the Santa Monica Freeway eastbound. That's sort of a collector there. And at this point in time, it looks like he's going to stay on the eastbound 10, just crossing Maple, just south of downtown Los Angeles, swerving pretty close to some of those vehicles. What's remarkable, though, is how quickly that motorcycle can accelerate. You'll see it at one moment. We'll see it down at 60, 70 miles an hour as he slows, and then within a matter of seconds, up to 100 plus. And the speed right now extremely high. Push on in, Marcel. Go as tight as we can, and let's get as good a look as possible of the motorcyclist. You know, we haven't heard if it's a man or a woman. It's difficult to tell for certain from this shot. So it's unclear. We haven't got that information from the police department. I'm having a hard time telling what type of motorcycle it is, but it looks like a large CC motorcycle, maybe up to 1,000 cc's. And the power on those bikes, the speed on those bikes is pretty incredible. There won't be any patrol cars, and I doubt we'll see another CHP motor unit come up behind this individual at these types of speeds. Possible, but that was kind of a shock to me to see a CHP motorcycle officer up at 100 miles an hour right on the tail of this bike. That was pretty incredible. I wasn't certain at first if it was a CHP officer, and then we could tell that it was. But we are traveling now on the Santa Monica Freeway eastbound. At that point, once you get into what we call the East LA interchange, he has a choice. He can get on the 5 freeway southbound, continue eastbound on the 60 freeway, or travel on the 5, the Golden State Freeway northbound. Of course, at any time he can get off the freeway. But as far as freeways are concerned, that's sort of the options that he will have in this intersection right here as he continues eastbound on the 10. That far right lane, I believe, would get him either onto the East 60 or the 5 South. And we'll see exactly how he continues and proceeds here. But boy, the speeds we have seen have been extremely dangerous, especially to the motorcyclists. Any type of accident at those types of speeds around these vehicles, a pothole, a sharp move by a vehicle in front of the motorcyclist, and you know, he could wind up seriously injured or dead in an accident like that very easily. His speed has slowed a little bit. I don't see any units behind him for the most part. So in a lot of cases, they will go to a surveillance mode and just surveil the motorcycle from the air. They'll back the LAPD helicopter off quite a bit where they can still keep him in sight. And then at some point, possibly that will cause the motorcyclist at this point to slow down and not drive so aggressively. And I think that's what they've done for the most part here. They're in a tracking mode as far as not having any other vehicles right behind. Certainly at those types of speeds over 120 miles an hour, that wasn't going to be an option. And then they have the helicopter overhead. We are southbound on the 5 freeway now, crossing Grande Vista out to that East LA Boyle Heights area. And up ahead, there is a little traffic around the 710 down into Commerce. You may have to deal a bit with that. It'll be a little more congested. And if he, this individual, the motorcyclist, tried to keep these speeds, he's going to have to swerve in and out of traffic. That can get a little dicey. That can get scary. That can cause an additional threat on our freeways. But he'll have a choice here in a moment as far as the freeways are concerned, to continue on the 5 or to pick up the 710 of the Long Beach Freeway. And you see the speeds have really slowed. I talked about that volume up ahead. There's a lot more traffic here. And if you try and go through these vehicles at the speeds the motorcyclist was traveling earlier, this individual, that certainly could be deadly. They slowed down quite a bit to try and weave their way through this traffic on the South 5 coming up on the 710. It looks like to me right now he's going to continue on the 5 southbound, have an option to get over to the right and maybe get on the 710. But certainly it's good to see that the speeds have slowed, although even 65, 70 miles per hour swerving past these vehicles, it's so dangerous. If someone in those cars does not see him come up behind him that quickly and makes a turn, cuts him off, has to swerve and runs into another car, that's the kind of thing that we certainly like to avoid, and it could cause serious injury not only to the motorcycles, but someone traveling in these vehicles as well. We've seen a lot of horrific accidents on our freeways with motorcyclists who are just so vulnerable, and at these types of speeds, certainly an incident more than likely would be deadly. Can you get me to the other side? At least for the moment here, we've seen the speeds really slow down quite a bit compared to what we saw earlier. You know, the volume of traffic here has caused the freeway speeds to be closer to, 50 miles an hour. And you see the motorcyclists really slowing down here. Southbound on the 5, coming up on Atlantic. We're in East LA. Swerving in and out of traffic, but at least for now the speeds have really slowed. I mean, 70 miles an hour is nothing like the 125 miles an hour that we saw just a bit ago. And we have just crossed overhead. Our camera has a tough time staying on something when we're shooting straight down. It tumbles a little bit, and that's what you saw there a moment ago. But now we have locked on once again. The speeds have really slowed here as we catch more volume. The volume actually gets worse down through Commerce, down towards Slauson, and it could be even worse down, making your way down into the Norwalk, Downey area. So we'll see. But at least for now, we don't see that threat we saw with a motorcycle traveling at 120 plus miles an hour there for a moment. We're seeing speeds that have slowed considerably. There's no CHP right behind him, only LAPD helicopter overhead. And could you get me a little tighter to the freeway? We're going to get some trees here in the way in a moment, I think. And we'll continue to follow this. Now, once again, we don't know any more than this individual is wanted for a failure to yield. We don't know if they ran the plates, and police may have a lot more information than we have at this point. If they just tried to pull the motorcyclist over for high speeds, obviously he did not pull over and continued to drive at an extremely high rate from time to time. But you could tell, even at these speeds, 50, 60 miles an hour, swerving in and out of these cars, in between these cars on the freeway, you can see just how dangerous this is. The potential for this to turn bad, right there, how quick it is and how close it is in between those vehicles. Just one wrong turn, and we're going to have a crash here, and it will not be good. So we're on the southbound 5. We're coming up towards Washington Boulevard. We're still in Commerce. And traffic even gets a little worse once we get down towards Slauson, down past Slauson, then to Paramount and Lakewood Boulevard, and then the 605. I can see up ahead that the traffic is going to be even more difficult for him to navigate if he wants to continue at speeds that look to be about 20, 25 miles an hour faster than the rate of volume, or the rate of flow on the freeway right now. But CHP has backed off with their patrol units. And right now we just have LAPD overhead along with us following the motorcycle on the southbound 5. And if you did just join us once again, we've been following this probably for about 35 minutes or so, 30 minutes. We believe it's been going on for about 45 minutes. It started in South Los Angeles on the 110 freeway, we believe, with the motorcyclist failing to yield, traveling at a high rate of speed. The pursuit was on. It went on to the 105 eastbound, and for the most part, the route that he took to the 105 east, 405 north, onto the 10, and then to the shoreline, then turned around and came back eastbound on the 10, had been smooth sailing as far as the volume is concerned. Then all of a sudden it got a little more dicey here as far as the volume is concerned and the amount of traffic we have on the freeway on the southbound side of the 5, we're traveling now down into the Downey area, coming up on Slauson. Once it gets past, say, Lakewood Rosemead, that off-ramp coming up here, traffic seems to ease up a bit, and then it looks like it's a pretty good drive all the way down into the Buena Park area from what I can tell by looking out of Air 7 HD. So we saw some tighter congestion there for a while. We've seen a couple of close calls. We saw CHP motorcyclists come up behind this motorcycle at 100 miles an hour. I hadn't seen that before, not them following at those types of speeds and getting that close. I have to think he was just trying to get a good look at the suspect in this case, the rider of that motorcycle, maybe determine whether it's a man or a woman. They didn't give us that officially, so we don't have that information. And then they'd have a little bit more to go on if the suspect in this case makes a foot bail, gets off the freeway real quick. We've seen that in a lot of cases. Goes in between some houses, dumps the bike, and makes a run for it. They may have a better description by having that CHP motorcycle get right up on him for a moment. But what was unusual was the speeds at which the motorcycles were traveling when he did that. But you can see the volumes eased up a little bit from what we saw in the Commerce area. We're on the southbound side of the 5. Now we see some speeds really starting to pick up, approaching 100 miles an hour. This is on the southbound 5. We'll be coming up on the 605 here in a moment. And boy, up ahead, if you're familiar with some of the work they've been doing on the 5 freeway, boy, excuse me. Well, once you get past the 605, they have 6 lanes available. It's been a widening project. It's been going on for about the last 5 or 6 years. And once we get past the 605 freeway, it's really wide open. There's a lot of space. The volume is very light. You've got 6, in some areas as much as 7 lanes up ahead. This project has really opened up the drive. It used to be so horrible through here, this stretch in between the 91 and the 5. But now what they've done is they've almost finished this project. And you're going to see once it continues here another half a mile or so. And boy, look at the speeds again. But once that happens, then there's a lot of open space on the freeway with not a lot of cars. Open up out of your shot for a moment. To give you an idea, it looks to me like that's a CHP helicopter now and not an LAPD helicopter. Push into it. I believe that's CHP. So it looks like CHP may have taken over this in the air as well. And it doesn't appear, as I look behind this, there is a patrol car behind now, probably about a mile. So the motorcyclists cannot see the LAPD cruiser. I don't see a CHP, or excuse me, a CHP cruiser. I don't see a CHP motorcyclist behind this any longer. But this stretch of freeway is wide open here as they make their way southbound, basically down towards the Fullerton, Anaheim area. Go. Okay. Yeah, the speeds here really are quite excessive, above 120 miles an hour. You know, our speed, we should be able to keep up with someone doing about 140. And then we're point A to point B. When the freeway makes a turn, we don't have to turn. We can basically go direct in that direction. So, you know, we can catch up with them fairly quickly. But we're seeing some incredible speeds here. We're going as fast as we can go right now, and we're having a hard time keeping up with the motorcycle. So that gives you an idea the type of speeds that he's traveling at. I mentioned to you how wide this freeway is here. They've opened this up in the last few years. They're almost done. Now get a little further south. There's still some areas that they have to work on. But right now, he's pulling away from us, and we are going as fast as we can go in the helicopter. Even the CHP helicopter, it's a little faster than ours because they don't have all the equipment that we have with the camera and the microwave and the ball on the front. Really a lot of drag in our helicopter compared to the CHP helicopter, and that's what that is there. They're a little quicker than us. It's the same type of aircraft, but they don't have the drag coefficient that we have. But the motorcycle is even pulling away from them and us at this point. And I've covered a lot of pursuits, a lot of motorcycle pursuits, but I think this is the first one that I covered that we could not keep up. And that gives you an idea just how fast this individual is traveling. Still on the southbound 5, well south of Firestone Boulevard, I think Carson Artesia Boulevard now. And it is smooth sailing as far as the drive is concerned. This is this stretch of freeway that is extremely wide. It's that construction that they've been doing. You see the northbound side, they're still working on that. See how narrow the lanes are there? There's only 3 lanes northbound. At some point, they're going to open this all up, and there'll be a stretch of 6 to 7 lanes in both directions in between the 91 freeway, basically all the way down into Anaheim, and the 605 freeway. But wow, the speeds are just incredible. 140 miles an hour, faster than our helicopter can fly. So we're doing everything we can do to keep up. I'll open up a little bit. You'll see even the CHP helicopter is behind. They're trying to get right on top of them, and they can't. So the speeds here are incredibly quick. And one little incident at those types of speeds, and more than likely the individual riding that bike would not survive. This is a smooth stretch of freeway. It's brand new. You don't have things like potholes or anything like that on this portion of the roadway. And he's coming up, or the motorcyclist is coming up on the 91 freeway here from the southbound 5. So he traveled a lot of distance in the time that we've been overhead following this. Coming out of South LA onto the 105, on the 405 by LAX, and it looks like he's on the transition to the 91 freeway eastbound. So that portion of the freeway doesn't look too bad. A little congestion out towards the 57, out to that portion of Anaheim. That's going to slow this individual. So we'll see how this plays out. Once again, it certainly gets a little dicey. One thing it will do is give us a chance to catch up. One thing that helps us out a little bit, if the motorcycle would have continued southbound on the 5, that's where the TFR, the temporary flight restriction, which really isn't very temporary, they call it that, from Disneyland. Disneyland has a 3-mile flight restriction. We can't fly overhead unless we're above 3,000 feet. And so if you would have continued south on the 5, that would have made it a little more difficult for us to follow along. But because the speed slowed on that transition road, on the 91 freeway east, so the 5 south to the 91 east, we've been able to catch up a little bit and get right behind the motorcycle. As I look up ahead, it looks like we got some very heavy traffic out past Harbor Boulevard. So that's traveling in that northern end of Anaheim, out towards Fullerton. And we are going to see, if he continues on the freeway here, we're going to see him get into a spot where it's going to be very difficult to continue at these speeds. It's almost close to stop traffic out there, about 3 or 4 miles ahead of us. He's eastbound on the 91 Boulevard in that Anaheim area, the northern end of Anaheim. Then we're going to get into Fullerton once we get out to the 57. But we've been able to at least catch up and get abeam the motorcycle since speed slowed a bit. But that's not going to last long, as once again you see the speeds are extremely high, and from time to time the speeds he's traveling is faster than we can go. So we'll continue to follow along. It's unclear exactly what this individual's wanted for, except for excessive speed. CHP and the LAPD have been following this. They may have more information on this individual, but at this point in time, all we know is they're trying to get motorcyclists out of or off of the freeways into custody and out here as a nuisance, as a danger to people on the freeway, because at these types of speeds, that motorcycle can almost be like a bullet. So the speeds have slowed a bit as we continue to travel on the 91 freeway eastbound. As I mentioned a moment ago, though, we're going to see the situation change here very quickly, because we're going to run into a scenario where traffic looks a little slow. It's not quite as slow as I thought it was when I looked at it from a distance. Sometimes that can be a little deceiving when you are looking at something from a distance. It doesn't look as bad as I thought it was. This is the stretch where I thought he may really have to slow a bit, or the motorcyclist may, but it looks like he's been able to stay in that left lane and keep the speeds up fairly high at this point in time, and the congestion here hasn't slowed him that much. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out. We've seen a lot of pursuits in the past where, and I see a couple of units getting on the on-ramp here in front of them. We'll see what happens there. We see a lot of situations, especially in the recent past, the last couple of years, things that we didn't see 10 or 15 years ago. And that is, at some point in time, if they feel it's too dangerous, they'll just let this go. They've got a license plate. Maybe the description of the individual they have matches the description of the registered owner. Maybe they feel like they'll get this individual later. It's unclear exactly how they're going to handle this and what the strategy will be. For now, though, with these types of excessive speeds, they have decided to continue to follow. We're on the 57 freeway southbound, and that does pose a little bit of a problem for us, because we have to climb and go above 3,000 and get approval to go through that flight restriction I just mentioned that we have above the Disneyland area, 3 miles from Disneyland. We can't fly to there. Now, law enforcement probably won't be affected by that. They'll get a special clearance, but we can't do that. So we're in the process of trying to climb, get above 3,000 feet so we can continue southbound on the 57 freeway. It's South 57, leaving the 91 freeway. We're traveling down through the Anaheim area, not too much further down here. You'll run into the Pond, Anaheim Stadium, and then the Orange Crush interchange where the 57, the 22, and the 5 all come together. So we're above the 3,000, and we're just trying to coordinate being able to fly down through this area. We have to get approval from Coast Approach, and we're in the process of doing that. Speeds have slowed a bit here on the 57 freeway southbound, although sometimes what happens is our angle is really important as far as how exact the speed is with the SkyMap. If we're too far away and the angle is such, it's hard for us to get a really exact speed. But when we're right overhead and we're close, those speeds we had above 120 miles an hour, 130 miles an hour, approaching 140, those look pretty accurate to us, and that gives you an idea just how fast this individual has been traveling. And the acceleration is pretty amazing in between vehicles that are doing, 65 or 70, and you'll see him just fly past some of those vehicles. The suspect, once he gets on that throttle, that bike just takes off. I couldn't tell what model it was, what manufacturer, the Yamaha or Kawasaki or a Honda. It was difficult from the shot we had. And now we're up so high at 3,300 feet, it'll be really difficult to tell. But we're southbound on the 57, just passing. I think if we open up a little bit, give you a little perspective. I think Angel Stadium's off to the right. We just passed that. Now coming up on the 5 freeway and the 22 freeway split, we can push back in. We're right over top of Angel Stadium right now. And staying in the left lane, the 57 southbound comes to an end here. If you're in the left lane, you're going to either transition onto the 5 south, or one of those transition roads will take you to the 22 freeway east or westbound. So we will see what happens here in a moment. We'll have an idea. I think that lane there is going to put them on the 5 freeway south or the 22 west. They'll have a decision to make. There's a split coming up, and you can either take either one. You can either get on the 5 southbound, which would make us head us down into Santa Ana and Tustin, or if you start to make a loop, you'll get on the 22 freeway, and that'll head you back to the east. So it looks like right now, as he makes this turn, I think it's committed to be on the 22 freeway eastbound, away from the 5. And the 22 freeway eastbound's wide open, and that's going to stay that way all the way out to the 55 freeway. So if the individual stays on the freeways, it'll be the 22 freeway to the 55 freeway, and at that point another decision to be made. So we're trying to follow along. We're having some difficulty with air traffic control. What happens is there's final traffic coming into John Wayne Airport, and we're up high, so we have to stay west of their approach course, and that means he's getting further and further away from us. So those speeds you see there are a little difficult to get accurate because we're several miles away up high. At some point, since we're clear the TFR, let's see if we can get down to the ground, and then we'll be able to cover it. Just telling my pilot what he needs to do so we can cover this. We're up overhead of the TFR. We're clear the TFR now. Now we need to get down, and we should be able to follow along. But for the moment, because of our altitude and the flights that are going into John Wayne Airport, we've been restricted to the west of their extended center line. As soon as we dump the collective and push the nose over and slam this thing down to the ground, then we will be able to continue west and pick them up. Okay, just get her down. I think it's our best bet. So we may have a tough time. Can we go north? Because if we can go north, we're fine. We just have to get clear. If we can get an idea, Jay, if you hear what direction the motorcycle is going on the 22, northbound. So he's going north. We can turn around even and go north. Copy. So we're in the city of Orange. We got a little out of position because we were restricted. We're trying to get permission. Right there is the other helicopter, and there are 2 of them I have in sight. So you're clear to the north. There you go. There's 1, there's 2. I got them both in sight for you. And so the The motorcycle's on the 55 freeway northbound. He's way up there. So best speed to the north. Traveling out of Orange up into that Anaheim Hills area. If it continues on the 55 north, be back on the 91 freeway. He's way up there, north of the 22, about 5 miles in front of us. Oh, he's off here, and that's on, it looks like he got off on Milford Street. Chapman, excuse me, Chapman. Okay, headed eastbound on Chapman. And this is the first time we've seen the motorcycle off of the freeway and on the surface streets. I'm not certain if it started on the surface streets in the South LA area, but since we've been following the pursuit at extremely high rates of speed on the freeways, the first time we've seen, did he stop there? Did he make a turn? Turned into the gas station. So there is a CHP helicopter overhead. They'll be making a radio call and trying to get units to that gas station as quickly as possible. Wouldn't surprise me if you see them swarming in a moment. Now, this is quite a ways away from where this originated. We're in Orange off of Chapman, just east of the 55 freeway, and this started all the way out in South Los Angeles. But at those types of speeds, you can travel a long distance in a very short period of time. Do you see the motorcycle there, or is it behind the sign? There we go. I see it now. Orange PD, we understand, is on the way to the gas station. Thank you, Jay. A motorcycle at this point in time, it looks like it's refueling. Most of that's coming from the CHP helicopter overhead, relaying that information to the other officers in the area. More than likely, they'll be here quickly. Hopefully they can get here before he gets a full tank of gas. There you go. You see a CHP officer pulling in. Hopefully they'll have another one. That could be an unmarked vehicle behind him too. It came in pretty quick. I'm not sure. Off to the right. Yeah, CHP motorcycle is out, or officer is out. It looks like he has the suspect in his sights behind that pump there. And it appears he's going to take him into custody. So, boy, this was an extremely dangerous pursuit because of the high speeds. It's been a long time since we've seen a pursuit at speeds this high. At one point, we showed him close to 140 miles an hour on the Santa Monica freeway. Right now, the suspect, it looks like, is in custody. A patrol car pulled in very quickly after the motorcyclist tried to get fuel. He's down on the ground behind that pump there. We're trying to maneuver around so you can see that. The officer's going to want to call for more assistance right now. I just want to keep him detained at this point in time. He's going to want some other officers to come in to help him, make sure he can cuff him without incident and get him into custody. One person we understand now in custody. We should see a couple other vehicles pull up here in a moment. But boy, it was such a high-speed pursuit with that motorcycle. At times, it was traveling at such a high rate of speed that we could not keep up. And that's happened to me a couple times in the past, but not in this helicopter. It's happened in a Long Ranger and a Jet Ranger, but not an A-Star, which is a pretty quick aircraft. But it is over now. We don't believe there are any incidences. We don't believe anyone was hurt. We don't believe there was any accidents. So it all ended well, even though most of the danger was probably to that motorcyclist, certainly at the speeds we saw. It was dicey at times, swerving in and out of traffic off the Santa Monica freeway, the 405, the 5, down to the 91, to the 57, to the 22, and now in custody here off Chapman Avenue in Orange. It's over without incident. No one was hurt. So that certainly is good news. Copy.
was able to make him give himself up. So he's currently in the back of the CHP vehicle now, and I reckon this might be a code 4. Code 4, for anyone listening doesn't know, means that it's all over, safety the public, and I think he might be over here. No. Yeah, the other. So, Simon S. Skyfox. Great day, we'll head back home. Yes, good mate. Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Jax.
Assignment desk from News Chopper 4 Alpha. Hey Rosa, just checking in. They have him in custody. Did you want us to stick around or should we start heading home? Okay, copy that. We can do that. Alrighty, we're clear, guys.
helicopter drop coming in. Let me know, could you, mate? They might, we might just do a couple of orbits to show them some video because they, obviously bad fire day today. If we don't get any more later today, they might use this video. This was Orange, corner of Chapman and what was it? Do you remember? So yeah, sorry, it was in Orange, just off Chapman. Hey, Melissa, just remember it was actually Chapman and McPherson. There's a 7-Eleven on the corner. Good. If you may just give me one more orbit, we should be cool, mate. I'll just okay. So I'll just show how it is in relation to the houses. I'm just using the video to show how it is in relation to the houses. Unusual spot to start. I imagine it's a homeless fire. I reckon we're cool, mate. Simon J. Skyfox kind of documented the fire. Would head back to Van Nuys. Yeah, good to go home, mate.